Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. I am here without Paul again for this week, unfortunately, due to scheduling conflicts again. But thankfully, we will not have to do a repeat of last week when I had to do it on my own. That was a bit of a mess. Apologize for that, but don't worry. I called it a pinch hitter for this week. I'd like to welcome to the show Mike Albertin from the Games My Mom Found podcast. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, great to be here. Glad you had me on.
Good to have you on. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome. Are you ready to talk about some Fallout?
Yeah, a game that I loved, yeah.
All right.
But yes, I am excited to talk about it.
All right, let's talk about Fallout. So, Mike, before we begin, how about you tell us a little bit about your show?
Sure. I have a podcast called Games My Mom Found, where each week we dive into a retro game and kind of give you a review and talk all about it. And it ends up being a rant rave, and sometimes we end up off track and give you whale facts, but it's fun. We've been doing it for we have about 17 episodes up so far. So if you guys get a chance,
nice,
love you take a listen. But today we're talking all about Fallout, which I was excited that you brought that up.
Now, usually on your show, do you usually review games that you've played before, or do you play them specifically for the episode? Are they new to you when you play them for the episode?
Most. Each way we do it is each time one of the hosts will pick a game, and a lot of times it's something new that the other guys haven't played. Sometimes it's stuff that we never played at all, and we wanted to introduce it. Like I picked Super Metroid one week because I really wanted to try it finally, and it was what pushed me over the edge to finally play that game after 15, 20 years.
Yeah, right. And you did do an episode about Fallout.
Yes.
Is that one that you just played recently, or is that one that you've played before?
It was my first time. I had played Fallout 3 many years ago, but this was my first time ever digging into the first Fallout.
And what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, the game. I know there's a lot going on. I know it's a good game. There were things that I hated because here I'm not used to the language that the game is speaking. I'm not used to PlayStation. I'm not used to PC games. I'm not used to PC RPGs. So I'm not used to using a mouse and keyboard. So here I am in a world where I don't understand the language I'm reading. I don't understand the tools I'm using, and I'm trying to go on this grand adventure. And I was striking out most of the time. I missed so much stuff in that game. I mean, I got to a point where I'm just like, I gotta get the water chip. Gotta get the water chip. That's all I cared about.
That's right. You know, the funny thing about that too is that you don't even really need the water chip to finish the game.
You can skip it.
Yeah, it's actually funny. That's one of the things I really liked about this game. One of the things that really appealed to me in the beginning, the very first time I played it, way back, I guess is the late 90s now, is that it was so open-ended that there really were only two objectives that you needed to do, and how you got there. There was a little bit of structure to guide you there, but it really ultimately didn't concern itself with how you got there, as long as you just did those two things. Just two places you need to blow up, and as long as you blow them up, the game's good.
And you have a lot of time. That time limit got me nervous when you first start playing, but it really, you have so much time to get the water chip. Plus, you can even make the time limit longer, which was also, I never did, because they're like, if you do this, the somebody will find you. So I never did it.
I mean, I don't think I've ever not found, I don't think I've ever run out of time, basically. I think there is something you could do to send water or something, you get an extra supply to give them more time.
In the hub, there's a water merchant you can talk to.
Right, yeah.
It's an interesting game.
It's cool, because it's it's great, because I don't, it gives you that sort of sense of urgency, but it doesn't actually give you it doesn't inhibit you. It still encourages you to explore, and it is entirely possible to finish the game without actually even finding the water chip, because if you just want to go around shooting everything and blowing everything up, eventually you'll just happen to blow up the two things that you need to do to win the game.
That was one of my problems with the game is my stats were so wrong for what the game is. I was trying to follow a guide and put my stats in the right direction, but I couldn't kill anybody. My biggest hard hitter in my team was Dog Meat. He killed everyone that I killed. It was a freaking dog. My guy would miss. My guy was terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I remember on your show you were talking about how there's sort of like a right way to do it. And if you don't do it the right way, like you basically have to like, I forget if it was you or one of your co-hosts was talking about how they had to basically play the game and then replay it the correct way.
One of my co-hosts,
Okay.
he was the one that made us play Fallout, which I thought was fun because he loves the games. And at the time we had first started, we didn't talk a whole lot outside of the show, so he didn't give me the hints that I needed about this game. So I was going in very blind until we recorded. No, I didn't do my stats right. I mean, because if you don't do your stats right, you're not going to hit very strong. You're not going to be able to hack things if you don't put your stats in the right. If you try to be a jack of all trades, you're just going to fail. At least that's how I felt.
Which is kind of interesting because I actually did not feel that way myself. Is because that's one of the great things I liked about this particular game is that it doesn't necessarily you don't necessarily have to min max your character the way a lot of other RPG, especially on the computer, a lot of those games do. And I find that like it actually is there is always a benefit to having points somewhere. And I kind of end up being, as long as you have like a strong combat specialty, you can basically do whatever you want with everything else. Because it is the first time through, it will be very combat centric, and there are ways to do pacifist runs and, you use dialogue to bypass a lot of combat. But first time playing through, as long as you just choose one specialty, in my case, it was just like pistols and rifles, and that's all you needed. That's all I needed. And then everything else is sort of like, oh, I need to hack more. Therefore, I'll throw a bunch of points into hacking, and now I can hack, and I can get through that part.
Like, the way you beat, I mean, for the two missions that we were talking about earlier, both of them I did through stealth and hacking. I didn't kill anybody, because I couldn't. My guy couldn't take down a super mutant no matter what.
Yeah, and you had the option to do that, though. It was great.
Yeah.
You could just stealth and hack.
It was very, I mean, I had a hard time freaking doing the stealth, just because I didn't have the stealth boy. I had some stats in stealth, but not the best, but he made it by. I was able to sneak by and do what I had to do, which was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool the game lets you do it. Hey, there's even that secret ending if you tell the super mutant that you're a human when you're inside Necropolis, I think it is.
Yes, that's right. I believe so.
Yeah, it's Necropolis. However you pronounce it.
Something like that. Something like that, yeah.
I made the mistake of telling the mutant in the dialogue choices that I was a human or take me to your leader. He's like, okay, and then you get dipped into a vat of acid. I was like, oh.
Yeah, that wasn't. They kind of really want people like you for their things. So
I wasn't too happy when I found that out.
But it's great because one of the other things too about this game is that it was very, for its time, especially as far as my gaming experience was concerned. Like, there was obviously a lot of games with Easter eggs in it, but this one in particular had the nerdy Easter eggs, like the things that you wouldn't really think people would reference. I think that's really what endeared it to a lot of people in a very enduring way, is that people remember, oh, that's the game that like referenced Red Dwarf and Doctor Who and Monty Python and all these things. Like, it was and I get that has nothing to do with the actual game mechanic, but I think that's sort of like that's a sort of like established that sort of feeling for a lot of people that they're playing a game with a friend, like the game was their friend because they're like the game is into the things that they're into.
Which does make sense. Like, it does have the Doctor Who reference you just mentioned where you find I don't watch Doctor Who, but I know it, the phone booth.
The TARDIS,
and this game
TARDIS,
came out in 97, so I don't think, because Doctor Who didn't even have his resurrection yet,
not yet.
What makes it so huge in today's market, it hadn't happened yet. So, I mean, that's also kind of an interesting thing. It didn't pick something that was popular, it picked something that they found popular that other people wouldn't have known existed, because I didn't know what the hell Doctor Who was in 97. I barely know now, but I know it exists.
They were, if it came out in 97, that puts it about 1 year, I think, after the Doctor Who made-for-TV movie, which I'm pretty sure did not win it very many fans.
Because 97 is long before Christopher
Eccleston.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's like at least 10 years in between.
Mm-hmm. That's all I know of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I know, and it's a great. I love the revival. I love the reboot, or not even reboot. It's just a revival.
Yeah.
The revival series, and it's great. But you're right. A lot of the time that they made these references was before Doctor Who references were quite what they are now.
It picked things that weren't common to try to get you. I mean, one thing about the world is that it's constantly changing. You can play the entire game and not see some of the random encounters that you would get on the world map, such as the TARDIS, such as an alien ship just sitting there crashed. I mean, there's stuff that, and you would never notice in the game if you just didn't happen to come across it, because when like all four of us played through it, only I got the TARDIS. The other ones, they didn't get it. It's just how this game is just, there's so many random encounters that don't really happen, which I thought was very interesting too. They put stuff in there you're not going to see.
One of the other things too is there's a very rewarding little Easter egg in there, in which one of the characters, I think it's not a major character, but it is a character that you basically will always encounter. I think just the way it's sort of set up. You have to like walk into a town, and he's like a character that will, I think he like, if you walk close to him, he'll stop you and talk to you. And his name turns out to be Dangerous Dan McGrew, which is a reference to like one episode of Red Dwarf. Just out of nowhere is this sort of like, and I just happened to get that reference. And I think back at the time when references weren't quite so spammed out on the internet, it was really cool to be like, hey, I understand that reference. That was from one episode of Red Dwarf that no one else understands, but they threw that in there just to see who would.
Because I wouldn't have. I know what Red Dwarf is, but I never actually watched it, so I wouldn't have gotten that reference either. It's a very interesting game. Like as I've told people before, if you haven't played it before, it's something to try just because it's so unique, especially for its time. But it's not an easy game to dive into.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's actually one of the yeah. I mean, if it's the first time the first time doing anything is really going to be a little bit tricky, but I think I think as far as they go, Fallout is probably one of the more accessible ones to get into for a computer RPG, for a PC RPG, just because it's like I say, it's just a little bit more forgiving than most of them really are.
Man, my character was terrible then because I couldn't do it. It wasn't forgiving for me. I stacked him so wrong in that game. Oh. He was terrible.
Well, you got through it, and you got through it by stealthing and hacking, and that's a valid way. No one said it had to be an action RPG,
and speed.
But that's just sort of how people go.
I had good speech skills. Like if you when you do the very end with the Unity thing, I got through that completely through speech because I couldn't fight him.
Yeah, and that's definitely an option, and I love that it's there. There's I'm sure you probably I'm not sure if you actually did this in a playthrough, but you might probably, if you researched it, they actually discourage min-maxing. Because if you try to crank down your intelligence to bump up your other stats, they actually completely like wipe out your dialogue choices for everything other than like guttural sounds and grunts and nonsensical like. Bleh.
I know what you're talking. I didn't do it, but I read about it before when I was trying to figure out the stats for him. They said, yeah, you just can't talk. You just won't be able to talk to anybody in the game. Which was kind of funny. They did that. And
it's mind-blowing, too, especially at the time. Like, you have to, I don't think anyone really ever speaks poorly of Fallout very often. So it's kind of the fact that I'm talking about it now, and, we try to defend underdog games, and it's hard to really say Fallout 1 is an underdog, but I admit that it probably might not have, I don't know, as far as an RPG goes for its time, I think it's aged pretty well. But at the same time, I know a lot of people, I've been kind of reading a lot about how more people generally prefer the Bethesda Fallouts, if that's where they started. And so it's kind of, if you haven't started with the original Fallouts, it might be harder to get into them. But, one of the things people have to sort of understand about Fallout was how mind-blowing it was at its time. It was really just such an open world, such an open play experience, and just such an amazing environment, game system. It was just, for its time, it was mind-blowing.
I mean, it still is. Like, even when I was digging into it earlier this year and kind of just seeing all the things that are in the game, it's still, I mean, the fact they made something like that in 97, it's still mind-blowing.
Yeah, for sure.
I know it's a God, what's the word I'm looking for? A spiritual successor to Wasteland, which I never played.
Yes, that's correct. I also have not played. I did not even learn about Wasteland until very recently, or not very recently, but like a few years ago.
Okay, I thought maybe because I know you're more of a PC guy than I am. I'm
a bit of both. I like the consoles too. I'm just very much more of a. I don't know what the term for it. Like they used to say Western RPG. I don't know if that's still really the term for it now, but
it still is.
It is okay. I'm very much more of a Western RPG than I am a Japanese style RPG gamer.
I'm a very, back when I was younger, especially in this time, very big Japanese RPG gamer. Still am, but very much back then.
And I definitely loved them, or I loved some examples of them back in the day. And there are some that very well transcend, like Chrono Trigger, for example, really transcends the genre. But no, ultimately, I do generally prefer the Western RPGs. So that's kind of why a game like Fallout, the Western RPGs really progressed in huge incremental steps throughout the 90s. And Fallout was no different. It was just like this huge step up.
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, even though
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play it till way later, I always knew what it was. I always knew it existed. Like when Fallout 3 came out, I was aware of the other two Fallout. I had played Fallout 2 before a couple times, but I never got very far. So like when I first played this the first time, I was excited to to finally play this game. And then I less excited as the game wore on, but I was very excited to finally tackle it.
It might be worth trying Fallout 2 as well, just because it is such an improvement over Fallout 1. As much as I love Fallout 1, Fallout 2 just does everything a lot more and better.
I really want to. It's definitely on my list to tackle Fallout 2 someday, just to, one, for an episode, but two, just to finally play the game that I couldn't really get anywhere when I was like, God, maybe 15 or so, and finally finish it.
Yeah. Especially now that you're warmed up for it and you kind of just understand it a little bit better, you'll be more prepared.
Yeah, I know the weirdness and the stat building. I think Fallout 2 might be a little kinder with the stats, too, from what I've heard, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is also very possible.
I know it's a bigger game. I know 2 is a huge game, from what I've seen, like when I looked up stuff about it.
Mm-hmm.
1 is much more condensed. You have a big open space, but there's only really a few areas. You have a couple towns you go to. You have maybe 3 or 4 dungeons you have to go through in that sense of it. The water chip, the cathedral, and the military base.
Yeah, that's right. It's absolutely very much the first game. It would be difficult to play. I think it was actually kind of a little bit weird after having played Fallout 2 to go back to play Fallout 1. Just because there was a lot more... It did feel a lot emptier after having played Fallout 2.
I can believe
the
that.
First time... Yeah. So the first time I played it was sort of like, oh wow, check out this huge open world and there's so much stuff to do. And then the second time I played it after... or actually not even the second time, sorry. I should say just when I played it after playing Fallout 2, I was sort of like, wow, it's not a lot around here.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that so much stuff is randomly generated. I was in a town, I went up one screen, and I ended up in some abandoned area near the town, but it was just a Deathclaw just walking around. He had no reason to be there. I don't know why he was there. I completely just left right away. But I just like the fact that so much randomly generated things happen. Like my first trip to Necropolis, I was walking, I'm heading towards the marker, and I get into a random encounter, fight a bunch of just random bandits that are there, and I thought I was in Necropolis, and I'm like, oh, where's the town? Where's all the stuff I'm expecting? And then I realized I never made it to town. I got to the city, but I got into a random encounter before I actually made it to the circle. And that's just how this game is. There's so much things happening under the hood that you might not realize or even see your first time through.
There's also, I think I remember it mentioned at one point on your show, and again, I can't remember exactly if it was you or one of your co-hosts, because I know you have a few people there. But somebody was mentioning how in one of the key mission locations with like the force fields, how Dogmeat just always got himself fried.
Yeah, I mean he goes as he shouldn't go. The AI was in control. Like for me, when I was in the cathedral, that's why I finally had to kill Dogmeat, because I couldn't sneak with him. Because if you go upstairs to try to sneak, they see him, they attack you, and you can dismiss your other allies, have them just wait outside. You cannot dismiss Dogmeat. At least I couldn't. I seen people do it on YouTube videos. I could not dismiss him, so I finally had to put a bullet in his head to stop him.
I was not aware that anyone actually did that. I was not aware that you could tell Dogmeat to stay.
Supposedly. I couldn't.
I don't remember how I handled Dogmeat in that last little mission there, but I do know. This is kind of like a funny thing, is that I actually bought Fallout 2 from a store, not the big box, just like the disc and the guts, and that's how I first played Fallout 2. But before that, I actually read through some of the manual, and there's like at the back, there's like sort of like a journal of the original Fallout Dweller from Fallout 1, which sort of sums up his basically the canonical playthrough of Fallout 1, like what the character is assumed to have done.
That's cool.
Before going into Fallout 2, and he specifically mentions canonically that Dogmeat died from the force fields in that last little spot.
Okay, that is funny.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet a lot of people must have had that happen to them. We're like, we're going to write it in the manual.
Pretty much, yeah. So they actually went ahead and said, yeah, that's basically where Dogmeat dies.
That's hilarious.
You can't really get further than that with him.
I think it's the military base has the force fields, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I know when I did the military base, I just snuck through and got out of there. But I'm pretty sure that's the place that has force fields that come up, and when the alarm is triggering there, everybody's after you.
That's right, yeah. I mean, it's been a number of years since I played it last, so I don't remember the details, but I'm pretty sure that is correct.
Me and Dogmeat didn't make it there because I killed him in the cathedral. He almost killed me, too. That also explains how weak my character was. I had to wear power armor to finally be able to fight Dogmeat and kill him because he was doing too much damage to me. Like, it was ridiculous. I could not kill him.
That's why people love Dogmeat. He was so useful. He was so good. He wasn't somebody that you had to worry about. He could take care of himself. Or, I mean, you could worry about him getting you in trouble, but he could always take care of himself in trouble.
He couldn't fight super mutants, though. I tried that. He got killed in one hit from the super mutants. I mean, for me, because my first Fallout was 3, so going back and playing this, I thought it was interesting seeing all the super mutants again and seeing how the story is a little close. Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, and I love Fallout 3 as well. I love Fallout 3. I loved Fallout New Vegas. I thought they were different.
They're completely different games. I mean, it's a whole different. It's like comparing apples and like a banana. They're from the same. They're both a fruit, but they're completely different items. Look completely different. Same.
Depending who you ask, it's basically comparing like an apple to a hamburger.
That's a much better comparison where I was going. They're both food items.
Yeah. But and I totally, going into Fallout 3, I was totally upset that they didn't go with the Fallout 1 style, because that's what I love. That's the kind of RPG that I love. But I thought they did it well. I thought that if they were going to bring it into a first-person style, they brought in enough elements for it to be a familiar experience to the original fans, as well as appealing to the new ones.
I would agree. I mean, even though I wasn't an original fan, but going back now and seeing after playing Fallout 1, and seeing all the things that were in that game, there are so many similarities in 3. Like the super mutants, bringing them right back is some. Because I can't remember correctly, but are the super mutants in Fallout 2 also?
I believe so. Fallout 2 is surprisingly one that I have not played as much as I have played Fallout 1, even though I love Fallout 2, and Fallout 2 is actually the one I declare in my top 5 favorite games of all time. But I always play them so closely together, if I even make it to Fallout 2, that I always forget if the super mutants are also in Fallout 2 as well. I'm almost tempted to think maybe they're not, but I wouldn't be surprised if they actually are, and I'm just forgetting. Because like I said, it's always kind of blended into one whole experience to me.
I know Fallout 2 has a lot more to do with the Enclave, which was also in Fallout 3, which is another callback to the two older games, which I thought was interesting because I didn't really know that until I was researching later on. That the Enclave, plus they're on the cover of Fallout 2 is the Enclave. That's an Enclave soldier with power armor.
That's right.
Which I thought was kind of cool when I'm like, oh yeah, they're the bad guys in Fallout 3. I thought that was a nice throwback.
That's
They kind of did that with the third one, where they're trying to input the elements to get people excited and to bring new people on and still have all the old elements there. Just a completely different style of game. I know people do love their Western RPGs. Like, I know you do. I wasn't one of them, but I can appreciate it for what it is.
When you played Fallout 1, when you finished it, did your guy, did you kill the Overseer?
No, I just left.
Okay.
I didn't care.
I
was just happy credits were about to roll.
Yeah, because I think there's two things that can happen. Number one, I believe if you played Fallout 1 just as being an asshole, I think it automatically makes you kill the Overseer at the end.
Huh.
But
kind of cool.
If you were generally pretty good, they wouldn't do it automatically, but it would give you the option to do it if you so chose.
Huh. I didn't try that just because, well, one, he's sitting on a frickin' machine gun carrying.
Normally, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does he come
down? At the very end, the very end of the game, he kicks you out of the vault, And he's like, the two of you are standing like in front of the vault. He's like, yeah, so you're not allowed back in, by the way.
Oh, I can't remember.
And
that.
there's like a little moment where I think the first time I played it, I even thought it was just a cutscene because he just like left me standing there and he like turned his back and walked into the vault. And apparently, if you actually wanted to, you could take that time to kill the guy. And I kind of didn't even really realize that. I don't think I've even done it personally myself because in subsequent playthroughs, I've just been such an asshole that they just assumed that I wanted to and killed him for me. So
that's funny.
It's the details. There's the details of the game that really sell it. Yeah, and I think the fact that in Fallout 2 and Fallout 1, there's like so many aspects of the story that I don't even remember. It kind of just goes to show it's not even really about the story. Like the story is kind of there, but it's more about the experience. It's more about playing in that world and exploring that world. And it's more about like the immersion of the experience than it is the actual plot. And I think the later games, like from Fallout 3 onwards, they have a lot more of a story, but I just think that the first couple games was just so much more just about the atmosphere, the environment, and the experience.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Because I mean, you can go through the first Fallout and miss a lot of what's happening in the story. Because I missed tons of stuff because I would read what I had to, talk to what I had to, but I was just trying to kind of go through the game, and you have such different experiences each time you play that game with all the random encounter, and just there's just so much to it that you might miss because you don't have to do it. Completely your choice how you play it.
Yeah, that's something that definitely stays very consistent throughout. In fact, I think it gets to the point that Bethesda's kind of taking that a little too far with like some of the Fallout games and definitely the Elder Scrolls games, where it's just sort of like, okay, here's the main quest, and here, which is like 10% on the pie chart,
like
and
Oblivion.
And then here's the all the other all the side quests that you can do, and that's like the giant 90% of the pie chart.
Yeah, because they go crazy. I mean, this is just the beginning of it. It's not Bethesda, but how do you pronounce that? But this is just not them, but this is just like the beginning of that idea, because there's so much you can do,
which was great at the time because I think it really hit that balance very nicely back then, where it's sort of like you could do the main quest, and I think for the most part the first time they kind of encourage you to stay on course with the main quest because you don't realize that you have a lot of time to find that water chip.
Oh yeah, I was nervous,
but you don't have to. You eventually find out you really don't need to be nervous. I think then you kind of have a lot more just I can just sort of do more. I could do side quests, and that's when you sort of play and just sort of snoop around. You're like, hey, here's stuff I can do that I didn't do last time. I totally can do them.
It's definitely. I mean, and it's interesting to see that it's getting so. Because back then with Fallout 1 and 2, I don't think it was ever like a household name type thing. Like people who liked it loved it, but a lot of the world didn't know it exists really until you had 3 and 4 that, well, especially 3 and then New Vegas and 4 really make it a regular staple now.
That's correct.
Like everyone knows Fallout now.
And that is very true. I remember the early 2000s. I'm saying even as late as like 2006 possibly. I actually, when did Fallout 3 come out?
2008. I have
2008. Okay, so it's probably like 2006 or so, like very close to when they came back. That I was on message forums, and I was such a big Fallout fan that I'd always make Fallout references, and I had like the Fallout logo as my avatar. I'd always have to explain. I'd always have to go on about, oh, Fallout's such a great game. Has anyone played Fallout? And no one did. Like very few people did. And so when I've actually finally found out that they're making Fallout 3, I was just like, why would anyone, like, I'm happy to see this come back, but why did anyone decide to bring Fallout back? Because no one knew it. And it turns out that actually, no, a lot of people loved it and very passionately loved it. We were just such a small little group of people.
Yeah, because it's just, for one, PC. I mean, that I think is a big part because it didn't really come to console for 2004 with the Brotherhood of Steel, which came out in PS2 and Xbox back in 2004, but that was not a hit, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think so. I don't think it was even a hit with the Fallout fans.
No, I don't know much about it, but I know people don't like it, I'm pretty sure. So
yeah, I'd like to give it a try just because it's more supposed to be like a Diablo-ish kind of just dungeon crawler.
That's cool.
Sort of thing. So yeah.
never
which
even...
is not the reason you really want to play a Fallout game, but I do like that style of game too. So it'd be nice to see what it'd be to mix between them.
Yeah, I mean, it looks interesting. It's something that I definitely need to track down someday and try, because I love bad games. I love playing games that no one knows. That's one of my things. I don't do it a whole lot on the show, but I most of my collection of games is a lot of real niche things that I'd walk into a GameStop and be like, oh, I've never seen this before, and it'd be some weird Japanese game, it'd be like $10, and I'll buy it. Might never play it, but I'll buy it and put it in my collection. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. I kind of gave up on that just because I did once. I think I quote unquote found like every Nintendo game ever in digital copies. I'll leave you to fill in the blanks on that one.
I understand.
Yeah, and I totally went through this. I was like, oh man, I love that there's like hundreds of games I've never played before, and I discovered that there's a reason why we only remember a dozen and Nintendo games. It's like it's awful. Not even the kind of games where it's sort of like, oh, this is so bad it's good. It's just sort of like, what the hell is this? Like how somebody spent like $90 on this at some point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you go back and play a game like, playing Fallout, playing something that's back for 10, 20 years ago, and just the experience is so different. All the things that we're used to nowadays, they're not there yet. Like all the quality of life upgrades that we're used to, checkpoints.
Yeah,
a lot of games didn't have a lot of checkpoints. In Fallout, if you didn't save, well, you're gonna be in trouble. If you don't save often.
Yeah,
the game ain't gonna save for you.
Oh yeah, no, we were used to that back then. Like, actually, it's funny you say that because Fallout was like huge quality of life improvements for us at that time.
Which I can believe. I only games I really played during this time, and I played a lot of RTSs at this time. In the 90s. Fallout was one I just never got to, unfortunately. Well, sort of unfortunately, but because I hated this game when I did my episode. Oh, but it's been months have passed, and I've kind of toned down. And I can see it for what it did and what it was, and appreciate it. I just will never play it again.
Which I get. It's there's a very large divide between people who like Japanese style RPGs, or sorry, not the people who like them, but there's a large divide between a Japanese style RPG and a Western style RPG.
Oh yeah, especially at this time, because I like in RPGs being able to level up and make myself stronger, get new equipment. In this game, you can, but it doesn't feel comfortable.
It's gradual. It's very gradual.
I like to sit down, put a podcast on, and just sit and grind for 2 hours in an RPG and just keep doing random battles. I can't do that in this game. That's just me.
Mm-hmm. No, and it's also I also find that especially with the Japanese style, and I say Japanese style just to bypass that whole argument of like, oh, does it have to be Japanese to be a JRPG? So I say Japanese style RPG.
Japanese style fits.
But I think a more fitting term for that would actually be adventure games with RPG elements. Although that's a bit of a mouthful, so that doesn't really catch on. But that's how I would really classify it to be the most accurate. They're adventure games with RPG elements.
Yeah, that's a good term for it because it narrows it all down.
But yeah, especially for someone who loves and couldn't get enough of the Western style RPGs. Going from something like Dark Sun, which I think was only just a couple years,
I never heard of
Dark
this.
Sun was probably just like a few years before, and I loved Dark Sun because that was like a huge open game for me, and then going from that to Fallout, and it was just like the graphics were completely blowing away, the animation was completely blowing away, the immersion, everything was just amazing, and I still love Dark Sun. You can look it up. It's actually available on GOG. There's two games. There's Dark Sun Shattered Lands and Dark Sun Wake of the Ravager. They're both great. Shattered Lands more so than Wake of the Ravager, but
these look interesting.
It's great, and I could do a whole other episode just on Dark Sun alone. But
I'm gonna have to try these now.
Yeah, give it a shot. I'd love to hear what you think about it. We can probably have you back on at a time once you've given it a shot. But you could definitely feel it's. Well, obviously the proper predecessor to Fallout was Wasteland. I don't even know when that one came out. That's kind of a new game to me.
I think it's the 80s. The first
Oh,
Wasteland.
geez, really?
Maybe
wow.
I'm wrong. Maybe it's the early 90s. I've seen screenshots of it. It doesn't look clean, to put it simple. It's you can tell that it wasn't. It's pretty old at this point.
To put it nicely, yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull it up though real fast while. But no, I mean, because that's what Fallout, because they didn't get the rights to it, so that's why they made Fallout. Yeah, 1988 was Wasteland.
Oh, wow. Wow, that must have been mind blowing for its time.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've looked at screenshots of it. It's a very it's a game made in the late 80s, but
yeah,
from everything I've heard, everyone talked about, people really liked it. I mean, that's why you had the petition for Wasteland 2 that came out recently. Because people
that's right.
still had all these great memories of it. I want to say Interplay couldn't get the rights from whoever published the first Wasteland, so they went with Fallout, which is essentially Wasteland, but they had their own name. They were able to do what they wanted.
Yeah.
And then somebody bought the rights to Wasteland, and then we have Wasteland 2. That's a whole nother thing, but which I never played either.
Anyways, so I think that's about all I am able to talk about Fallout 1. We've already strayed off topic
a little bit,
bit,
yes.
But so I think that's a good sign to say that I'm about done. But are there any is there anything you want to throw in? Last thoughts on Fallout from your perspective?
Well, one thing I wanted to mention that in Fallout, we kind of brief about it when you do finally find, I think it was the Master was his name, the super mutant computer.
Yeah, that's right.
Unfortunately, I had that spoiled for me because I was watching one of those Watch Mojo videos, so I knew who he was before I got there. But just the fact that you're able to talk your way out of it, you're able to kill him, you're able to blow up the nuke next to him, and just when he's talking to you, he's glitching out while talking to you, which I just thought was so freaking creepy and cool, and definitely was something that was going to stick with me, even though I don't like this game, it will stick with me for a long time.
Fair enough. Is there any just before we call it into the episode, are there any shout outs or plugs that you'd like to make for yourself or for others?
If you guys get a chance, please take a listen to my podcast called Games My Mom Found. We're on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, just about everything. Take a look.
Sweet. Awesome. Yeah, it's a great show. I've listened to a few of the episodes. It's definitely it's great. It's you have the 17 episodes that are getting better each time.
We're learning.
It's a really cool, and it's a really cool concept. Just playing the games and a lot of classic games, playing a lot of the classic games now and sort of like mulling over how they are today.
Oh, but I did want to say congratulations on becoming, you're not a statistic anymore. I was reading a thing where 50% of all podcasts that start don't make it past episode 7, and 25% of those don't make it past episode 25.
That's right.
So you're no longer a statistic anymore. You made it past.
I think because I obviously we're in the same group that kind of delightfully points that out all the time. I think that's kind of one of the motivating factors for me. Was this where they said 25% of that 50% or something like that really don't make it past 25. I was sort of like, hold my beer, I'm doing this. Hey,
I was waiting to shout that out because I thought that was cool.
Well, thank you. It's great to I forgot that you're a part of that group too that always points that out.
I ignore most things in that group, but yeah, I'm part of it.
but no, it's appropriate that you should be my guest when I cross that line.
I just thought that was cool.
Well, thank you very much. It's been great having you on the show. It's been great chatting with you. It's great to have a host from another podcast on here to kind of mix up the style a little bit. And it's great for me to not do a solo show again.
It was fun to be on. It was fun to talk about Fallout again and just the series too.
And I'd love to have you on again once Paul is back too, because he definitely adds a lot to the conversation that I don't bring to the table. So it'd be great to have the three of us all chatting it up.
I'd be up for it. Definitely.
So yeah, you're welcome back anytime if you ever have a game that you want to talk about and you want to take a break from being the host of your own show. You're welcome to knock on our door anytime.
Okay, you got it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and thank you all for joining us again. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.